great afternoon to everyone on the public square. I am Aogo Obo with Rotimi Sankoren on Ideas with IOB, and we are together again. It is a great afternoon. Depends on where you are actually. If you're, like we say back in the day, slapping your way through the island because of the non-availability of transport to commute. Happy are you today? But otherwise, strap the seat belts and let's get ready to go. We have drama like you haven't seen it in a while going on right now in Bayelsa State, where you have Daniel Dueye escaping from the lion's den in dramatic circumstances
That's an interesting way to put it.
as the governor-elect of Bayelsa State. So on one hand,
why the lion is wondering what happened.
he should be he should have been sworn in today. Instead, it is his opponent. But that's only half of the matter we have discussing today. As the report's been released by a special investigative report done by the BBC also too. We will look into that. But let's welcome everyone. Welcome Ayo.
Good afternoon, Aho, and good afternoon, listeners.
All right. Rich,
Okay.
waiting for your...
Yes, thank you. So before we go into the drama in Bayelsa, we also have a very, very important topic to discuss, and that topic is torture. Torture by police and security agencies and army. And we're going to be asking some important questions around it. We hope the technology will work so that we have Mayeni Jones of the BBC and Osai Ojigo of Amnesty International. But if the technology fails, it so happens that Ayobe has played an important role with the Police Service Commission. And therefore is a bit in the know of police procedure and processes. So welcome, Ayo.
Good afternoon. I mean, you're not welcoming me. I'm intending to put questions to Mayeni and to
So
Osai.
are we connected?
In a short while.
I mean, I think, Rotimi, that you know, basically for those who, I don't know if you've already previewed this, but the BBC report.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead. Let's just
Yeah, the
welcome
BBC, the
Let's-
BBC report is about a particular form of torture used by the security agencies in Nigeria called Tabe. But it speaks to, they focused on a particular form, but it actually speaks to the wider issue of accountability. And that's why Ideas, which as you know is about integrity, democracy, ethics and accountability, that's why Ideas is asking this question: who is being held accountable where the security agencies breach the laws against torture?
All right. So we have Mayeni Johnson now, the BBC. She's
Jones.
well, sorry, Mayeni Jones. Where did I get Johnson from? Hello, Mayeni.
Hi.
Okay. I don't know what time it is where you are, but it's a fine afternoon here.
Yeah, it's still we're only 1 hour behind.
All right. So,
So their weekend is a little bit further away than our own weekend.
Exactly.
Okay. Hi, Mayeni. Ayo has some questions for you.
Hi, Rotimi. Good to hear from you.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, Mayeni has done the report. And I should say that probably the questions are not for Mayeni, but for the authorities whose conduct was exposed. And I guess the first question is that in the video, your report was that the Nigeria police had not only responded and had not only not responded to your questions, even though in one case where murder had been committed, the judge expressed his outrage and also went on to say that the Inspector General must do something about this, must look into this. It would have been one thing if it had stopped at that, but the officer who was identified and named in the in connection with those deaths from torture has actually been promoted. So it's not just that the police kept silent. It was almost like saying, yeah, we've seen it, and this is our response. Has there been any further response from the Nigeria police or from any of the security agencies, particularly those which claimed we're looking into this?
Yes, unfortunately, since the publication of the report, we were expecting some sort of response from the authorities, but they've kept very quiet about it, which in and of itself is quite interesting. It's hard to make any deductions based on their silence. We know that they are aware of the investigation because, as you said, we reached out to them when we were doing it. But they haven't come out to deny our claims, and there's been no further statements made by the police or any other armed forces in the investigation has come. And this is despite the fact that it currently has about 3.8 million views on Facebook and is also performing very well on Twitter and Instagram. So the documentary is getting shown, but we haven't had a response from the authorities yet.
Now, can I also ask, Mayeni, because the fact is that under the Prevention of Torture Act that was passed in 2017 and signed by the president, the current president, torture is not permissible under any circumstances. Because I did notice that some of the response was, well, if these people are terrorists, then, you know, but the point is that whether they're terrorists or whether they're accused of stealing, what is it that the authorities themselves think that they are going to achieve by this torture? Or is it just a generalized campaign of brutalization and maltreatment that everybody who falls into their hands should be subjected to, rather than they're looking for any specific information?
In the course of this investigation, we definitely found that there were some members of the public that actually support the idea of torture, particularly in, as you say, the case of trying to crack down on the general insecurity in Nigeria, particularly the insecurity coming from Islamist insurgents in northeastern Nigeria. Many people think that because the crimes these insurgents have committed are so horrific that, only by violent means will we be able to gather intelligence to try and find them. So they are those who defend the use of torture by the authorities because they see it as a necessary.
But is that what the authorities say that they are torturing the people for? Are they actually torturing them to get information, or is it?
So the authorities don't admit torture. What we found is evidence, from gathering the social media videos, some of which appear to have been filmed by members of the armed forces themselves. But the authorities don't come out officially to say we support torture. So all we can do is deduct from their supporters online and whom we've spoken to what some of their motives might be. And the motive they use is cracking down on terrorism. Now the issue that we have is we have also spoken to many people who were not accused of terrorism.
Yes.
They were accused of petty theft. It hadn't been proven that the accusations leveled against them were even true, and then they're taken into a police station and brutalized using tabé.
Is that to make them confess, or
to justify?
Is that to make them confess, or what is the objective?
Yeah, I think that the hope is that they confess in some way, but then as you say, according to the law, that information shouldn't be admissible in court if anybody confesses because they've been coerced into doing so through the means of torture. That shouldn't be as admissible in the court of law. And the fact that these methods are still being used, I think, shows that there is something that needs to be addressed there when it comes to the judicial system in Nigeria and the use of any confession or evidence that been procured through torture.
I was noting that it's quite interesting that as you say, that many of these videos that are shown in your investigative report were actually, and indeed must have been, taken by members of the security agencies themselves and posted. And I wonder, because it came up into my mind when the Nigeria police was reported to have instructed that a closed circuit television cameras should be taken down in connection with the anticipated funeral of the father of the independent peoples of Biafra leader Nnamdi Kanu. And I let me confess that I'm a secret watcher of the television program Operation Repo. And they always say in that in that program, they always when the the owner of the car comes out and says, "What are the cameras doing there?" And the repo people always say they're there for our protection and for yours. And the point is that to say that to prevent us from doing something illegal and also to be a witness to anything that is done. So one would be a bit surprised at the idea that the police would not want their conduct to be recorded, and particularly given that practically everybody else, every second person with a mobile phone can do some recording. But what do you think about this contradiction between those who are almost proud to say this is what we did, and those who are recognizing that we need to keep what we are planning to do secret, in case, and the suspicion always, of course, is that because brutality, violence, and breaches of the law are going to be perpetrated?
I think there's a real tension between the official line of the authorities, which is to very much address these types of allegations or to deny that they're taking place, and the reality on the ground. A lot of the time, as you say, these videos appear to have been filmed by members of the armed forces. Some of the people that they film do appear to be very young. There's perhaps a certain measure of immaturity there where they have become desensitized to some of the violence that is meted out or some of the violence that they're carried out. And so you can hear in the videos, for example, them mocking the people that are being brutalized or giving details about themselves that would identify them quite easily. And I think that maybe is reflective to a certain sense of immaturity from the people who are carrying out some of this violence. And like you said, it's done in a sense of pride. This is what we can do. We're going to film it. We're going to share it on social media. We're going to send it to certain people. And also, I think one thing that it reflects is the issue that we talk about in our documentary, which is the issue of impunity. If you feel that something is going to be done to you as a result of these images being exposed, the last thing you'd want to do is to film them and send them to somebody else. But I think the fact that some members of the armed forces feel emboldened to film these acts and then share them among themselves shows that they don't really believe there's going to be any repercussions for them as a result of doing this.
Well, but even where there had been repercussions after a public outcry in the case of the two young men with whom the report started, the repercussions were amounted to very little more than a slap on the wrist. In fact, barely a slap on the wrist.
Is it indeed a combination of?
I should say, by the way, that one of the this was a case of two young men accused of theft, and they were tortured by the Joint Task Force. But the person who was identified was eventually charged not under the Prevention of Torture Act, where he could have had 25 years, but under causing bodily pain, I think, and was given a 3-month sentence. That's what I mean by the difference, a slap on the wrist.
I think we should also highlight that it may not just be impunity. It could just reflect serious lack of human rights training. Did you find out anything of that sort?
There's definitely been an effort on the part of the authorities, they say, to sensitize some of their troops on issues of human rights. I don't know how widespread that training has been and whether it's truly ingrained in the mentality of everybody that works in the Nigerian armed forces. The fact that we're still seeing a torture technique that is so brutal, that has existed for such a long period of time, and that has seemed to have spread, from wherever it's come from. We think it might come from Libya or even Mesopotamia or ancient Egypt, that it's spread so far across the continent. I think goes to show that we still have a very long way to go before everybody understands that this is the most effective way of tackling even the crimes of terrorism, which nobody is saying that terrorists should be given any leniency, but we are saying that this is a
not just illegal, not just illegal, but lots of experts have pointed out that information obtained under torture is often seriously unreliable.
Exactly. It seems counterproductive. And counterproductive will be of gathering intelligence and trying to resolve the very serious problem of insecurity that exists across Nigeria.
And I think there's also a problem. I mean, some of these people who are accused of being Boko Haram members were arrested even before President Buhari came to power, and they had been in prison without trial for many years. And it's a question why governments arrest people and don't charge them. But the belief of Nigerians now, particularly now that some of them have been tried, and those against whom no evidence can be found have gone through a rehabilitation process and are being released. And the reaction of many Nigerians, which is I found quite a contrast to our behavior when people who are like us, human rights advocates and so on, are detained by the authorities without trial. The reaction of many Nigerians has been somehow to imagine that there should be some law under which they should continue to be held in detention without trial. And so to step up to they should be tortured despite the guarantees in the Nigerian constitution seems to be something that even though we all call for the rule of law, that government must obey the constitution, we don't quite seem to make the connection.
I think it's a problem that you see all over the world, actually, to a certain extent. If you look even to the US and the so-called war on drugs, during the 80s and 90s, many people felt that that was using extremely punitive measures that ended up disproportionately affecting people of color, and also ended up putting many people who had committed minor offenses, such as carrying small amounts of marijuana, getting them into the prison system in such a way that made it very difficult for them to not become repeat offenders. So we often find that when you have a problem of insecurity in a country, the reaction from people is we need to crack down on this one.
And in fact, the whole sort of, if I can call it, the Jack Bauer syndrome, this idea that the terrorist has information and you can torture it out of them. It seems to have taken hold.
And the BBC has reported, on these types of human rights abuses right around the world, carried out by different, from the Middle East to America. Torture has been used around the world by different armed forces to try and extract confessions or to try and convert people. We recently reported on Chinese abuse in Chinese detention camps in Xinjiang against the Muslim population there. So this is by no means unique to Nigeria, but in all of those cases, it's definitely been shown to be counterproductive and to also target people who have done nothing wrong.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Mayeni, for joining us to discuss this issue. As Rotimi says, that the amount of training on torture, I mean, definitely armed forces will know that torture is wrong, but they need to understand that the things because the Anti-Torture Act is specific about what constitutes torture. A lot of times people feel that as long as we don't mark or permanently disfigure, then what we are doing does not amount to torture. And I think that the important thing about the Anti-Torture Act of 2017 is that it shows that, look, some of this behavior that you think is normal is not normal, and it is in fact torture, and it is illegal. So that training is definitely to be called for.
Okay, thank you so much, Mayeni.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Okay, so Mayeni Jones, the BBC, fantastic investigative work that had been done on that report, and of course throwing the ball into the court for the conversations to continue as a rolling conversation. All right, so Public Square continues, so please do not go anywhere.